One single mother accidentally messaged her boss saying, "I miss you." When he showed up and whispered those words, their lives changed forever. A story that will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment on where you're watching from. The early hours of Sunday crept slowly through the window of the small apartment in Brooklyn, bringing with it that grey light that precedes dawn. Sarah Johnson, 34 years old, was sitting on the worn-out sofa in the living room, surrounded by piles of school uniforms that needed to be labelled before Monday. Her eyes burned with fatigue, but she knew she couldn't put it off. The routine of a single mother allowed no breaks or delays. Sarah was of average height, with brown hair always tied up in a practical bun, and hazel eyes that carried a mix of determination and chronic tiredness. Her small but strong hands worked on autopilot while her mind wandered. She wore a faded Coachella 2011 t-shirt and sweatpants, her Sunday uniform, so different from the modest clothes she wore during the week as a customer service coordinator at Fit Nation, the largest gym chain in South Brooklyn. The phone vibrated on the coffee table, a message from Julia, her best friend since high school, who had moved to Denver 3 months ago due to a promotion at work. Sarah felt that familiar pang of longing tighten her chest. Sundays used to be sacred for them. Extended breakfast at the corner cafe, conversations about everything and nothing, laughter that made people at other tables look over. Without thinking much, still with her fingers half asleep from drowsiness, Sarah typed, "I miss you. Sundays aren't the same without you here." She added a broken heart emoji and hit send immediately, turning her attention back to the labels with the name Emma Johnson, 3rd grade B, that she needed to stick on the gym shirts. The characteristic sound of a message sent echoed in the silence of the apartment. Sarah continued her work for a few more seconds until something in her subconscious began to scream. An internal alarm, that terrible feeling that something was wrong, very wrong. She grabbed her phone, her heart starting to race. She opened WhatsApp and felt the blood drain completely from her face. The message hadn't gone to Jew, best friend. It had gone to Dr. Michael Smith, Fit Nation. No, 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 Sarah whispered, her hands shaking violently as she stared at the screen. The 2 blue checks were already shining next to the message, mocking her. He had read it. At 5:43 on a Sunday morning, Dr. Michael Smith, her boss, had read that completely inappropriate message. Michael Smith. Just thinking of his name, Sarah felt a confusing mix of professional respect and something more that she never allowed herself to examine closely. He was 42, widowed for 2 years, and ran Fit Nation with an iron fist wrapped in kid gloves. Tall, always impeccably dressed in tailored suits in shades of grey and navy, with dark hair streaked with silver at the temples, and dark brown eyes that seemed to see through people. He was known for his serious demeanour, how he kept his distance from all employees, and how he had transformed a small gym in Chelsea into a network of 12 locations across South Brooklyn. Sarah worked at the main unit, the very one in Chelsea where it all began. The 4-story glass building stood on a busy corner of Fifth Avenue, and she knew every inch of that place, from the spacious reception area with grey marble floors to the weight training room on the 3rd floor, passing by the Olympic and semi-Olympic pools in the basement. "Oh my God, what do I do?" Sarah spoke to herself, pacing back and forth in the small room. She considered deleting the message, but that would be even stranger. She thought about sending another one explaining the mistake. But what would she say? "Sorry, boss. I meant to send this to someone else, not you. That would only make everything more awkward." She thought about blocking his number and moving to another country. Maybe Julia could find her a job in Denver. Maybe she could pretend her phone was stolen and that it wasn't her. Sarah let herself fall onto the sofa, covering her face with her hands. She had worked at Fit Nation for 4 years, building her reputation there with a lot of sweat and dedication. She was respected by her colleagues, had received 3 promotions, and earned a salary that, while not exactly generous, allowed her and Emma to live with dignity. And now she had sent a "I miss you" message to her boss at 5 in the morning on a Sunday. "Mommy!" The sleepy voice of Emma came from the narrow hallway. "Why are you awake?" Sarah quickly wiped her eyes. She hadn't even noticed that tears of pure panic had started to fall, and forced a smile when her daughter appeared in the doorway. Emma was 8 years old, a miniature version of Sarah with some features of her father, who had disappeared before she was born. Light brown hair, always messy, curious eyes, a smile that lit up any room. "Just finishing up your things for school, sweetheart," Sarah replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Go back to bed, it's still early." "Are you crying?" Emma approached, furrowing her brow, with that concern too old for an 8-year-old. "No, honey, just tired. Go, sleep a little more." Emma hesitated, but eventually went back to her room. Sarah heard the creaking of the twin bed, the dragging of small feet on the cold floor. Once she was sure her daughter had gone back to sleep, she picked up her phone again. No response from Michael. Of course there wouldn't be a response. What, he could respond to something like this? Sarah imagined the scene. Him waking up early on a Sunday, perhaps to go for a run in Central Park, as she knew he did religiously, checking his phone and finding that completely unexpected message from his coordinator. She knew little about his personal life. She knew he was a widower because that had been news in the local papers. His wife, Rebecca Smith, had died in a car accident on the West Side Highway 2 years ago. She knew he lived alone in a large house in the West Side because she once overheard the receptionists talking. She knew he was polite but distant, that he never participated in social gatherings, that he maintained a clear line between professional and personal life, and she had just completely blurred that line with a pathetic message sent by mistake. The Sunday dragged on in slow agony. Sarah tried to distract herself with normal activities, took Emma to the neighborhood playground, prepared a simple roast chicken for lunch, watched cartoons with her daughter curled up on the sofa, but her mind wouldn't shut off, creating and recreating scenarios of what Monday morning would be like. Maybe he would simply ignore it. Maybe he would pretend he never received anything. That was the best possible option. Sarah clung to that hope like a castaway to a piece of driftwood. When she finally managed to sleep on Sunday night, it was already past midnight. Her dreams were a jumble of images, her arriving at the gym and finding a termination letter, her trying to explain with all the words coming out wrong, her simply turning and running away, never to return. Monday dawned with a sky heavy with grey clouds, threatening rain. Sarah woke up to the alarm at 5:30, took a quick shower, put on her work clothes, black dress pants, white shirt, grey blazer from Fit Nation with the logo embroidered on the pocket. She pinned her hair up in her usual bun, applied a discreet nude lipstick, and put on small silver earrings. Looking at herself in the mirror, she saw a composed and professional woman. No one could guess the chaos that reigned inside her. She left Emma with Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor from the apartment next door, who took care of the girl before school for a fee that fit Sarah's tight budget. She took 2 buses to Chelsea, as she did every morning, arriving at the gym exactly at 7:15. Fit Nation Chelsea was different in the early morning. The crowd of executives who trained before work hadn't arrived yet. The Pilates instructors were chatting animatedly, and there was the constant noise of treadmills and workout music. There were only the cleaning staff finishing their work, and Roger, the reception security guard, who waved at Sarah with his usual smile. "Good morning, Sarah. Heavy day today." "Good morning, Mr. Roger. Just the usual," she replied, trying to sound normal. Sarah crossed the marble lobby, passed by the motivational posters on the walls, and climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor where the administrative area was located. Her heart raced faster with each step. The customer service coordinator's office was at the end of the hall. A spacious room with 6 desks, hers near the window overlooking the avenue. When she pushed the door open and turned on the lights, she saw it immediately. A white envelope, the kind used for formal correspondence, was propped against her computer monitor. Sarah's legs nearly gave way. With trembling hands, she approached the desk, dropped her bag on the chair, and picked up the envelope. It wasn't sealed. Good quality paper, her name written by hand in a firm, masculine handwriting. Sarah Johnson. Sarah held the envelope for long seconds before finding the courage to open it. Her fingers trembled so much that the paper nearly slipped from her hands twice. She looked around the empty room, as if expecting someone to appear to witness that moment of pure agony. Finally, she pulled the paper from inside the envelope. It was a simple white card, without the company letterhead or any corporate formality. In the center, written in the same firm, slanted handwriting, there was just a short phrase, "I feel it too." Nothing more. No signature, no explanations, no additional context. Just those 2 words that seemed to pulse on the paper as if they had a life of their own. Sarah read and reread the phrase at least 10 times, trying to extract some hidden meaning, some clue about what it really meant. Was it a response to the wrong message? Was it a polite way to acknowledge the mistake without making it more awkward? Or could it be, no, it couldn't be anything but professional courtesy? She was so absorbed in looking at the note that she didn't hear the door open. "Sarah, good morning. Are you okay? You look as pale as paper." It was Jessica, one of the other coordinators, entering with her characteristic morning energy and a huge cup of coffee from the bakery. Jessica was 26, a practicing evangelical, and had the habit of talking too fast and asking too much about other people's lives, but always with genuine concern. Sarah quickly tucked the note into her blazer pocket. "I'm fine, just didn't sleep very well." "Oh, I understand. Weekend with a child is no rest, right? Is Emma okay?" "She is, thank God." Jessica started talking about her Sunday at church, about the pastor's sermon, about the youth group she was organizing. Sarah tried to pay attention, nodding at the right moments, but her mind was completely focused on that note burning inside her pocket, as if it were radioactive. "I feel it too." What the hell did that mean? The other coordinators began to arrive. Michelle, always complaining about traffic. James, the only man on the team already telling jokes. Olivia, quiet and efficient, heading straight to her desk without much conversation. The morning routine began to swallow Sarah, and she clung to it with relief. Emails to respond to, schedules to adjust, a problem with the membership of a VIP client that needed to be. It was resolved before 9. It was 8:20 when she heard it. Firm footsteps in the hallway, that specific sound of quality men's dress shoes against the polished wooden floor. Sarah felt every muscle in her body tense up. She recognized those footsteps. In the 4 years working there, she had learned to identify Dr. Michael Smith's approach by the characteristic sound of his walk, always confident, always rhythmic, always punctual. The door opened. Dr. Smith entered the coordination room carrying a brown leather briefcase and the tablet he used to review reports. He wore a charcoal grey suit with a light blue shirt and no tie, the first button undone in a minimal concession to informality. His hair was impeccably styled, the woody fragrance he always wore, something expensive that Sarah could never identify the brand, wafting through the room. "Good morning," he said to the room in general, but his eyes met Sarah's for a fraction of a second longer than usual. A chorus of "Good morning, Dr. Smith" came from the other desks. Sarah managed to articulate something that sounded remotely like a greeting, but her voice came out strange, even to her own ears. "Sarah, can you come to my office for a moment?" His voice was neutral, professional, impossible to detect any emotion. I need to review the customer retention numbers from the last quarter. Sure, Sarah replied, standing up automatically. Her legs felt like jelly, but she managed to walk without tripping. She felt the curious eyes of her colleagues, following her as she followed Dr. Smith down the hallway. His office was at the end of the floor, a corner room with large windows offering a view of the busy avenue and a slice of the neighborhood. It was a spacious area but curiously impersonal. Dark wooden desk, shelves with trophies and company certifications, abstract paintings on the walls that said nothing about who worked there. No personal photos, no decorative items revealing any traits of personality. Dr. Smith closed the door behind them and gestured to one of the chairs in front of his desk. "Please have a seat." Sarah sat down, her hands crossed over her lap to hide the trembling. He walked around the desk, but instead of sitting in his executive leather chair, he leaned against the edge of the desk, getting closer to her than protocol would normally suggest. "About the message," he began, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. "I need you to know that it was a mistake," Sarah interrupted quickly, the words spilling out in a desperate torrent. "Dr. Smith, I'm so sorry. I was texting my friend. We always chat on Sundays. She moved recently, and I wasn't paying attention to my phone. It was late at night, and I was tired, and—" "Sarah." He raised a hand, gently interrupting the flow of rushed apologies. "I know it was a mistake. You don't need to explain. I just want you to know it was completely professional. I mean, not professional because it wasn't meant for you, but it wasn't anything. It didn't mean—" Sarah was getting terribly tangled in her own words. A heavy silence filled the room. Dr. Smith was looking at her with an expression that Sarah couldn't decipher. It wasn't irritation, it wasn't discomfort. It was something softer, more vulnerable. "The note," Sarah continued, her voice lower now. "I didn't understand what you meant." Dr. Smith looked away to the window, watching the traffic below. His fingers drummed on the edge of the desk, a nervous gesture that Sarah had never seen him do before. He always seemed so controlled, so in command of every situation. "I was honest," he finally said, still looking outside. "My wife passed away 2 years ago. Since then, I've been living in a house that's too big, too quiet. I wake up, go for a run, come to work, go home, sleep, repeat. It's a functional existence, but it's not exactly a life." He paused, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that slightly disheveled his perfect hairstyle. "When I received your message, even knowing it was a mistake, even understanding that it wasn't meant for me, it was the first time in a long time that someone expressed something personal, something human, towards me. And I realized that I miss that too. I miss connection. I miss not being just Dr. Smith all the time." Sarah was completely still. Was this real? Her boss, the man who kept a calculated distance from all employees, was sharing something so deeply personal. "I shouldn't have responded," Dr. Smith continued, finally looking back at her. There was something different in his dark brown eyes, an openness that hadn't been there before. "It was inappropriate of me. You are my employee. There is a clear hierarchy here. I just wanted you to know that you don't need to feel embarrassed. The mistake was understandable." And my response was, "Well, it was genuine, but it doesn't have to mean anything beyond a moment of honesty between two human beings." Sarah didn't know what to say. She had rehearsed 1,000 conversations in her head about how this moment would be, but none of them included this unexpected revelation. "Thank you for understanding, and I'm so sorry. For your loss, I mean. I didn't know that. Well, I knew, but I never knew how to express. People never know," Dr. Smith said with a half-sad smile. "Death is uncomfortable, especially when it's someone young suddenly. People don't know what to say, so they eventually stop saying anything at all. You become the widower, and people treat you like you're a grenade about to explode at any moment. That must be very lonely." "It is." The raw honesty in his voice made something tighten in Sarah's chest. "But it's not your problem to solve. You have your own life, your own responsibilities. Your daughter, Emma, right? I've heard you mention her a few times." "Yes, she's 8 years old." "That must be challenging. Full-time job, a child to care for, doing everything alone." Sarah nodded. "It has its tough moments. But she's incredible. She keeps me grounded, with purpose." "I admire that," Dr. Michael said, and there was genuine sincerity in his voice. "The ability to find purpose, even when things are tough, it's something I've been trying to relearn." They fell silent for a moment. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, but rather filled with something unspoken, something that lingered in the air between them like smoke. "Well," Dr. Michael finally stepped away from the table, returning to the professional side of the conversation. "About the retention numbers I mentioned, they're actually great. You've done an exceptional job coordinating. The contract renewal rate has increased by 12% since you took on this position." "Thank you, Dr. Michael. You can just call me Michael when we're talking like this. The doctor always makes me feel like I should be prescribing medication." Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the room. "Did you study medicine?" "Civil engineering. But my father was a doctor, and I guess the title just stuck with me by association. And you ended up building gyms instead of buildings." "Life has its unexpected paths," he said, and there was a weight to those words that suggested he wasn't just talking about career choices. Sarah stood up. "I should get back to work." "Yes, of course." Michael also stood, walking with her to the door. As she passed by him, that woody fragrance enveloped her senses again, and she felt something strange happen in her stomach, a sensation that had nothing to do with professional nerves. She had her hand on the doorknob when he spoke again. "Sarah?" She turned around. He was there, just a few steps away, with an expression that mixed hesitation and determination. "Thank you for being real. It's refreshing." The following days unfolded in a new and unsettling strangeness. Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the conversation she had with Michael in his office. His vulnerability, so unexpected from a man who always seemed made of marble and corporate rules, had cracked something inside her, a wall she had built over the years of solitary survival in São Paulo. On Tuesday, he passed through the coordination area at 7:30 in the morning. Sarah was explaining to a new client about the different training plans when she noticed his presence. Michael waved discreetly, a gesture so small that anyone else might have missed it, but it made her heart leap foolishly in her chest. "Who is that?" the client asked, watching Michael walk down the hallway with his characteristic upright posture. "Dr. Michael Smith, the owner of the chain," Sarah replied, forcing herself to return her attention to the information folder in front of her. "He looks really serious." "He's very professional," Sarah said, and immediately remembered that voice saying, "You can just call me Michael when we're talking like this." When we're talking like this. As if there was a difference between formal conversations and others. What? Informal? Personal? On Wednesday, Sarah arrived to find a coffee on her desk. A large cup of cappuccino from the artisanal cafe that had recently opened on the corner, the one that charged outrageous prices but made the best coffee in the area. There was a small post-it stuck to the cup. "To help with the Monday that never ends." M. Jessica saw the coffee and let out a squeal of excitement. "Oh my gosh, Sarah has a secret admirer." "It's nothing like that," Sarah said quickly, ripping off the post-it and stuffing it in her pocket before anyone could see the handwriting. But she couldn't help the smile that insisted on appearing at the corners of her mouth. The coffee was perfect. Not too hot, not too sweet, just the way she liked it. How did he know? Sarah thought about the mornings she spent at the reception helping with the flow of incoming clients, always with a coffee in hand. He must have noticed. He had been paying attention. On Thursday, Michael showed up at the gym at 7 in the morning, an hour earlier than his usual schedule. Sarah was organizing the feedback forms from the personal trainers when she heard his deep voice talking to Roger at the reception. "Good morning, Dr. Michael. Early today, huh?" "I need to check some equipment on the 3rd floor. Some clients complained that the treadmills are making noise." It was a lie. Sarah knew it was a lie because she had coordinated the preventive maintenance of all the treadmills the previous week. They were perfect. He was making excuses to be there at that hour. 15 minutes later, he passed through the administrative area. This time, he didn't just wave. He stopped. "Good morning, Sarah. Can I steal a minute?" "Sure," she replied, trying to ignore the curious glances from Michelle and James, who were already at their desks. They walked to the coffee break area, a small space with an espresso machine, water cooler, and a few armchairs. It was empty at that hour. "Was the coffee good?" he asked, leaning against the granite counter. "It was perfect. Thank you, but you didn't have to." "I know I didn't have to. I wanted to." He had the sleeves of his white shirt rolled up to his elbows, revealing tanned forearms and a watch that probably cost more than Sarah's rent. "I've been thinking about our conversation on Monday." Sarah's heart raced. "Yes, you mentioned that your friend moved to another city. Denver, right?" Sarah blinked, surprised that he had paid attention to that detail. "Yes, Julia. She got a promotion at a multinational there." "That must be tough, losing your support network in a city like São Paulo." "It is," Sarah admitted. "Julia was... well, she was my person, you know. When Emma got sick, when I didn't know how to pay a bill, when I just needed to vent about a bad day, she was always there. And now she's not." "And now she's not," Sarah repeated, feeling that familiar tightness in her chest. "But life goes on. Ricardo fell silent for a moment, studying his coffee. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. "You know that big, quiet house I mentioned? Rebecca, my wife, she always said it was too big for just the two of us. She wanted to fill it with kids, with noise, with life." He gave a sad smile. "In the end, it was just me walking from room to room, turning on all the lights, because the silence in the dark is worse." Sarah felt a wave of compassion so strong that she almost reached out to touch his arm. Almost. But she held back. "Have you thought about moving to a smaller place?" "Constantly. But it's the last physical connection I have with her. The house we chose together, that we decorated together. It feels like a betrayal in a way, leaving that behind. It's not a betrayal to honor her memory while still living your own life," Sarah said gently. "I'm sure she wouldn't want to see you trapped in a museum house." Ricardo looked at her with an intensity that made Sarah feel as if he was truly seeing her, not just the employee, not just the efficient coordinator, but her, Sarah, the whole woman with her own struggles and scars. "How did you become so wise?" he asked, and there was a playful tone that she had never heard before. "I'm a single mother in São Paulo. Either you develop wisdom or you sink." "Fair enough." He took a sip of his coffee. "Can I ask you a personal question? You can say no." Sarah felt her stomach tighten, but she nodded for him to continue. "Emma's father, is he present?" "No." The word came out sharper than Sarah intended. She softened her tone, before continuing. "He disappeared when he found out I was pregnant. We were very young. I was 25, he was 27. He had big plans for his career, wanted to live abroad, work in imports. A baby didn't fit into that equation." Sarah wrapped her hands around the glass of water, needing to hold on to something. "I had to choose between following my own plans. I was doing a graduate program in business, had just landed an amazing internship, or having Emma." I chose her. I never regretted it, not for a second, but it's hard. Does he pay child support? Sarah let out a humorless laugh. He completely vanished. I changed my phone number. He deleted all his social media profiles. I tried to look for a while, but eventually realized I was spending emotional energy I needed for my daughter, so I let it go. That's very unfair to you. Life is rarely fair, Sarah said, echoing what he had said earlier about unexpected paths, but we do our best with what we have. You're amazing, you know. The way he said it, with absolute sincerity, without a trace of flattery or inappropriate interest, just pure recognition, made tears prick at Sarah's eyes. I'm not, she said, blinking quickly. I just do what any mother would do. No, they don't. Many people in your situation would have given up. You didn't just survive, you thrived. You built a career, you're raising a daughter alone, you maintain your integrity. That's no small feat. Sarah didn't know what to say. She wasn't used to this kind of recognition, especially coming from someone like Ricardo. Thank you, she finally murmured. A noise of approaching voices alerted them that others were arriving. The intimate bubble they had created in that small space burst abruptly. I should go, Sarah said, already stepping away. Sarah? She turned around. I enjoy our conversations. I hope we can continue. If you're comfortable with that, of course. I am, she replied before her rational side could scold her. I like it too. The smile he gave her was small, but genuine, completely transforming his usually serious face. Sarah carried that smile with her for the rest of the day, like a secret talisman. On Friday, the routine changed again. Ricardo began to pass by the reception not once, but 3 times throughout the day. In the morning when he arrived, at lunchtime always with some excuse about checking on something, and in the late afternoon before leaving. Each time there was a wave, sometimes accompanied by a casual, "How's it going?" Nothing too much, nothing that drew attention from others, but enough for Sarah to feel his presence as a comforting constant throughout the day. And always, there was that woody scent that lingered in the air after he passed by. Sarah found herself associating that smell with safety, with something solid in a world that often felt too unstable. On Saturday she didn't work. She spent the day with Emma, playground, ice cream, cartoons, but she found herself checking her phone more often than usual, kind of hoping for what? A message. He didn't have her personal number. Well, he did. It was on the employee record, but it would be completely inappropriate for him to use it. So why did Sarah feel a pang of disappointment when no message came? On Sunday morning, she woke up to a notification. Her heart skipped before she even saw what it was about. It was a message from an unknown number. Good morning, Sarah. Sorry for using your personal number. I got it from HR. I hope you don't mind. I passed by that bakery near your place this morning and remembered you mentioned they make the best French bread in the area. I bought too much, I always forget I live alone, and thought you and Emma might like some. I can leave it at your building's front desk if you want, or we can forget this message if it's too uncomfortable. Ricardo. Sarah read and reread the message at least 15 times. He knew where she lived. Well, of course he did. It was on the employee record. But he had gone all the way to Brooklyn on a Sunday morning? That was completely on the opposite side of the West Side where he lived. Sarah sat on the bed for long minutes, her phone vibrating gently in her trembling hands. Emma was still sleeping in the next room. She always took advantage of Sundays to sleep in, one of the few concessions to the strict routine they maintained during the week. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. What kind of response would be appropriate? Thank you, but you don't have to would sound ungrateful. You can bring it would sound, what exactly? An invitation? A green light for whatever that was to progress? Sarah got up from the bed and walked to the small window of the room. Brooklyn was waking up slowly on a sunny September Sunday. She could see the bakery on the corner, already bustling. Families buying bread, young people grabbing coffee in the morning before heading to some commitment. The normal flow of a neighborhood morning. He had come here. He had thought of her. While passing by the bakery, finally Sarah typed, "Good morning, Dr. Smith. I don't mind that you have my number. And yes, we would love the bread, but only if you're not too far away. I wouldn't want you to make a trip just for that." The response came in less than a minute. "I'm at the cafe nearby, 2 blocks from your building. No pressure at all. Just let me know." He was there. Now. 2 blocks away. Sarah looked at herself in the wardrobe mirror. Sleep shorts, an old college t-shirt, messy hair, no makeup. She looked exactly like what she was, an exhausted mother on a Sunday morning. "You can come up," she typed before she could change her mind. "Apartment 304. But I warn you, it's a mess here. I'll be there in 5 minutes, and I'm sure it's not worse than my place." Sarah entered into silent panic. She rushed to the bathroom, brushed her teeth, washed her face, ran a comb through her hair, and tied it all back in a ponytail. She considered changing clothes, but didn't have time. Besides, he had said he was coming to bring bread. Not that. He was coming for a date. This wasn't a date, it was just, what, a friendly gesture from a boss to an employee. But bosses didn't drive an hour on a Sunday morning to bring French bread. She did a quick scan of the apartment, picked up Emma's toys scattered around the living room, stacked the old magazines, straightened the sofa cushions. The apartment was small, an open living room and kitchen, 2 tiny bedrooms, 1 bathroom. But it was clean, organized, and had touches that Sarah considered important. The burgundy curtains she had sewn herself, the pictures of Emma at various stages of childhood hanging on the walls, the little plants on the windowsill that she insisted on keeping alive despite the lack of time. The doorbell rang exactly 5 minutes later. Sarah dried her sweaty hands on the side of her shorts and opened the door. Dr. Smith was there, dressed completely differently than she was used to seeing him. Dark jeans, a simple grey t-shirt, sneakers. Without the suit, without the corporate air, he seemed younger, more approachable, more human. He carried 2 brown paper bags with the bakery's logo. "Good morning," he said. And there was a hesitation in his smile that Sarah found strangely comforting. He was nervous too. "Good morning. Come in." Sarah stepped aside, and he entered the small apartment. She saw him take in everything, not critically or judgmentally, but with genuine curiosity. His eyes landed on the pictures of Emma, the worn sofa with the crocheted blanket that Sarah's grandmother had made, the small shelf filled with children's books and a few novels. "Your apartment is cozy," he said, and Sarah could feel he was being sincere. "It feels like a real home. It's small, but it's ours." Sarah took the bags from his hands. The aroma of fresh bread filled the space. "Seriously, this must be enough for us to eat for a week. I told you I bought too much." He shoved his hands into his pockets, suddenly seeming out of place. "I don't usually do this. Show up at people's homes without proper notice. If it's too weird—" "It's not weird," Sarah interrupted, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "It's nice, kind." A noise came from the hallway, barefoot footsteps. Sarah turned and saw Emma standing at the entrance of the living room, rubbing. Her sleepy eyes, her light brown hair all messy on one side. "Mommy, who is it?" "Emma, this is Dr. Smith. He works with me." Sarah realized the technical inaccuracy of that description, but she didn't know how to explain better to an 8-year-old. Dr. Smith knelt down to Emma's height, a gesture that Sarah noticed and appreciated. He didn't talk down to the girl. "Hi, Emma. Your mum told me you like swimming." Emma's eyes lit up instantly. "I love swimming, but I don't take lessons. I only swim when school takes us to the club's pool. Mommy said that one day I'll be able to take real lessons." Something passed over Dr. Smith's face, an expression that Sarah couldn't fully decipher, but that seemed to be part sadness, part determination. "Swimming is great," he said. "I swam competitively when I was younger." "Really?" Emma stepped closer. All her initial shyness evaporated. "Were you fast?" "I was decent. I never won an Olympic medal, but I won some school trophies." "I want to win trophies one day." Sarah watched the interaction with a tight heart. Emma didn't have constant male figures in her life. Her maternal grandfather had passed away before she was born, and Sarah's father had exited the scene when she got pregnant, unable to accept the pregnancy out of wedlock. Seeing her daughter talk so naturally with Dr. Smith stirred conflicting emotions, relief that Emma could have this moment, but also fear of what it would mean if that became more regular and then ended. "Emma, go brush your teeth and change your clothes," Sarah said gently. "Then we can have breakfast." "Is Michael staying?" Emma asked hopefully. Sarah looked at him, unsure of what to say. Michael caught her gaze and smiled at Emma. "If your mom doesn't mind, I'd love to." "Please, Mom." How could Sarah say no when her daughter looked at her that way, and when, if she were honest with herself, she also wanted him to stay? "All right, but you need to get ready first." Emma dashed back to her room, leaving Sarah and Michael alone again. "Sorry," Michael said immediately. "I didn't mean to invite myself, it's just that she asked and—" "It's fine," Sarah interrupted him. "Seriously, we just need to be careful, okay? Emma gets attached easily. And if this, whatever this is, between us doesn't work out, I understand." Michael stepped a little closer, his voice low and serious. "Sarah, I'm not taking this lightly. I wouldn't show up here, wouldn't enter your life and your daughter's life if I wasn't serious about it." "But what exactly is this?" Sarah asked, needing to hear it out loud. "Because you're my boss, Michael. That complicates everything." "I know. And if you want me to leave now and keep things strictly professional, I will completely respect that, but—" He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "How long has it been since you let someone take care of you, even just a little?" The question hit Sarah hard. When was the last time? When Jessica still lived in New York? Before that? Since Emma was born, Sarah had been solely responsible for everything, putting food on the table, paying the bills, caring for her when she had a fever, solving every little and big crisis. She didn't have the luxury of depending on anyone. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. "I know it's not, but it can be, Sarah. Sometimes things can be simpler than we make them." Before Sarah could respond, Emma returned, now dressed in pink leggings and a dolphin print shirt. "Can I show Michael my drawings?" "Of course," Sarah said, deciding to leave the serious conversation for later. "But first, let's eat. I'm starving." The next 40 minutes were strangely normal. Sarah brewed fresh coffee, heated milk for Emma, and placed the French bread in a basket. They sat at the small kitchen table, which barely fit 3 people, and ate. Emma chattered non-stop, talking about school, her new science teacher, and the cultural fair project she was developing. Michael listened genuinely, asking questions, laughing at Emma's childish jokes, engaging in the conversation in a way that didn't feel forced. Sarah watched it all with a tightness in her chest. This was so similar to what she always imagined a family could be. Dangerously similar. After breakfast, Emma dragged Michael to the living room to show him her drawings. Sarah stayed in the kitchen washing the dishes, but she could hear her daughter explaining every doodle, every color choice, and she could hear Michael responding seriously, complimenting specific details, making Emma laugh with silly comments. When Sarah finally joined them in the living room, she found Michael sitting on the floor next to Emma, surrounded by colorful sheets of paper. Her daughter was excitedly explaining a drawing of a mermaid. And she lives in a castle at the bottom of the sea, but she's not like Ariel because she doesn't want to become human. She likes being a mermaid, Emma explained, with the seriousness of someone discussing extremely important matters. That makes sense, Michael agreed, examining the drawing closely. Why would she want to trade the whole ocean for 2 legs? Sarah sat on the couch, watching the scene, with a mix of tenderness and fear. It was so easy to imagine that becoming routine, quiet Sundays, silly conversations, the presence of someone who wasn't just hers, but theirs. But the ease with which she could imagine it was also exactly the problem. Michael's phone vibrated in his pocket. He took it out, looked at the screen, and frowned slightly. "Excuse me, I need to take this." He got up and went to the small balcony, more of a nook with space for a plastic chair than a proper balcony, and closed the sliding door behind him. Through the glass, Sarah could see him talking, his expression growing increasingly tense. "Mum, I like Michael," Emma said, turning her attention back to her drawings. "He's nice. Is he your friend?" Sarah chose her words carefully. "He works with me, remember? But yes, I think we're becoming friends. Can friends become boyfriends?" The question came with that brutal honesty that only children possess. "Sometimes. Why do you ask?" Emma shrugged, coloring a starfish with a purple crayon. "I just asked. Melissa from school said her dad was friends with her mom first before they got married." "Not all. Friends become boyfriends, sweetheart. But it would be nice if you two dated. He seems good, and he likes swimming just like I do." Sarah felt her chest tighten. How could she explain to an 8-year-old that the world wasn't that simple? That there were hierarchies at work, financial complications, deep fears of dependency and abandonment? Michael returned from the balcony with a visibly disturbed expression. "Sarah, can I talk to you for a minute?" The serious tone made her stomach churn. She nodded and followed him to the narrow hallway, out of Emma's curious ears. "Something happened," Michael began, running his hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. I wasn't going to talk about this now, but, well, I just received a call that changes everything." "What happened?" He took a deep breath. "You know, I was married to Rebecca for 7 years before the accident, right?" Sarah nodded. "What I didn't know, what no one knew, is that before we met, I had a brief relationship with a woman named Chloe. It was over 10 years ago. It lasted only a few months. She was a foreigner, here for work, and when her contract ended, she went back to France. We kind of lost touch." Sarah felt she knew where this was going, but let him continue. "Last week, she found me on LinkedIn. She sent a message saying she urgently needed to talk to me. I ignored it at first, thought it was some kind of scam or something, but she insisted, sent me photos, proof." He paused, clearly struggling with the words. "Sarah, I have a son, Matthew. He's 6 years old. Chloe never told me about the pregnancy, because by the time she found out, I was already married to Rebecca. She decided to raise the boy on her own." Sarah felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. "Why is she telling you now?" "Because she got an international transfer to her company's office in London. It's a career opportunity she can't refuse. She'll be there for at least 3 years, possibly more, and she wants Matthew to stay with me. In the US, she has already consulted lawyers, has done a DNA test. He's definitely my son." "Oh my God, Michael." The call was from her. "She's arriving in New York next week to start the transition. She wants me to meet Matthew for us to establish a routine before she leaves. She has a flight booked to London for next month." Sarah leaned against the wall, processing everything. "How are you dealing with this?" "I have no idea." His voice was raw, vulnerable. "I woke up yesterday as a man alone trying to rebuild his life. Today I wake up as the father of a 6-year-old boy who doesn't even know me. I know nothing about being a dad, Sarah. I don't know how to take care of a child. I don't even know if he likes soccer or video games or if he has any allergies. Without thinking, Sarah reached out and touched his arm. Hey, breathe. He obeyed, inhaling deeply. You'll learn, Sarah continued, her voice firm. Being a dad doesn't come with an instruction manual. We figure it out along the way, make mistakes, apologize, try again. The important thing is that you're present and that you care. The rest you'll learn. But how? How do I do this and still keep the company running? How do I create a routine? How do I make him feel safe when I'm terrified myself? Sarah thought of all the nights she spent awake after Emma was born, terrified she was doing everything wrong. She thought of the first times Emma had a fever, and Sarah rushed to the emergency room, certain it was something serious. She thought of all the little terrors and victories of raising a human being practically alone. You take it one day at a time, she said simply, and you ask for help when you need it. You're not alone in this, Michael. I know it feels like it, but you're not. He looked at her with an intensity that made something stir inside Sarah's chest. Would you help me? I know it's a lot to ask. I know we're barely starting whatever this is, but you're the only person I know who really understands what it's like to raise a child, and I trust you. Sarah should have said no. She should have kept clear boundaries, protect herself and protect Emma from getting too involved in a complex situation. But when she looked at that man, always so controlled, always so in charge, completely disarmed and asking for help, she couldn't. I'll help, she said. In whatever way I can, I'll help. The relief on his face was palpable. Thank you, seriously, Sarah, thank you. But we need to set boundaries, she quickly added. At work, things stay professional. We can't give ammunition for gossip or let anyone think there's favoritism. I completely agree. And with the kids, we'll take it slow. I don't want Emma or Matthew to get confused about what's happening here. That makes sense. They stood there in the narrow hallway, so close that Sarah could feel the warmth radiating from him, could see the silver strands mixed with the black. In his hair, could count the little lines around his eyes, marks of worry and sleepless nights. I should go, Michael finally said. I've taken up too much of your Sunday. It's fine. And Michael? He looked at her. You're going to manage. It's going to be hard. There will be moments when you'll want to give up, but you're going to manage. He smiled, a small but genuine smile. How do you do that? What? Make me feel like everything will be okay, even when it's clearly a mess. Practice, Sarah replied with a half smile. A lot of practice, convincing myself of that first. They returned to the room where Emma was watching cartoons. Michael said goodbye, promising to talk again during the week. When Sarah closed the door behind him, she leaned against it and let out a long sigh. This was getting complicated. Very complicated. But for some reason, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. The following days were a roller coaster. At work, Sarah and Michael maintained a professional facade. Polite conversations, necessary interactions, nothing that drew attention. But she noticed his glances, brief and loaded with meaning. She noticed how he found excuses to walk by her area. She noticed the small smile he gave when their eyes met, and at night, after Emma fell asleep, they exchanged messages. It started with Michael asking for practical advice. What kind of bed to buy for a 6-year-old? How to deal with picky eating? What to do about nightmares? Sarah responded patiently, sharing her experience, suggesting books and resources. But slowly, the conversations evolved. They began to talk about other things, music, the city changing too fast, childhood memories. Michael shared about growing up in a strict Italian family where displays of affection were rare. Sarah talked about her mother trying to raise 3 children alone after the divorce, about how she promised herself she would do things differently with Emma. One Friday night, just before midnight, a message arrived. "I can't sleep. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong when Matthew arrives." Sarah was lying on the couch, a blanket over her legs, trying to watch a series but unable to concentrate. She typed back, "What could go wrong? He might hate me. He might feel like I'm taking him away from his mom. He might never adjust. Or, everything could be fine. It might be hard at first and then get better. You're preparing for the worst-case scenario, but you can't control everything. Sometimes you just have to trust." Trust in what? That love is enough. That genuine effort matters. That kids are more resilient than we think. A long pause. Then, "Do you really believe that, or are you just trying to make me feel better?" Sarah thought before responding. "Both. I believe it because I need to believe it. Because if I don't believe I'm doing enough for Emma, I fall apart. But it also works. Most of the time it works. Thank you for not giving me false assurances. You're welcome. Now go to sleep. You need your energy." "You should be sleeping too." "I know, but my brain won't shut off." "What are you thinking about?" Sarah hesitated. Should she be honest? Then she typed, "About you, about how everything changed so quickly, about how one wrong message turned into this. Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet. Ask me again in a few months." "Promise you'll be here in a few months?" The question, so vulnerable and direct, made Sarah's heart race. "I promise to try." That's enough for me. The following Monday brought palpable changes. Michael arrived at the gym with an air of nervous determination, carrying a folder full of documents and papers that Sarah recognized as custody and guardianship processes. He walked straight past the reception without his usual wave, heading directly to his office, and Sarah knew it would be a different week. At 9 in the morning, Michelle entered the coordination room with wide eyes. "Guys, Dr. Michael just announced a general meeting for 3 in the afternoon. Mandatory for all administrative staff. Does anyone know what it's about?" Sarah knew, but she couldn't say. She kept her eyes glued to the computer screen, typing an email that meant nothing, just to appear busy. "It must be about the expansion to the east side," James speculated, leaning back in his chair. "I heard he's negotiating a huge space in Brooklyn." "Or he's going to fire someone," Jessica murmured, always anxious. "He never holds a general meeting unless it's something serious." At 3 o'clock, the second-floor auditorium was packed. About 40 employees, coordinators, managers, senior HR staff, personal trainers filled the upholstered chairs. Sarah sat in the third row, next to Jessica, who couldn't stop biting her nails. Michael entered promptly, accompanied by Julio, the HR manager, and a woman Sarah didn't recognize, probably some lawyer. He wore a navy suit, his tie perfectly aligned, but Sarah noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers drummed against his thigh as he waited for everyone to settle. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his deep voice echoing through the sound system. "Thank you for coming. I know last-minute meetings interrupt workflow, so I'll be direct. I'm here to share a significant change in my personal life that will impact the dynamics of the company." A murmur swept through the room. Sarah saw Jessica squeeze her arm. "I recently discovered that I have a 6-year-old son. He will be moving in with me permanently starting next week. This means I will need to make adjustments to my routine and physical presence at the units." Michael paused, his gaze sweeping the room. Sarah noticed when his eyes lingered on her for an extra fraction of a second. "This doesn't mean the company will be left without supervision. I will be implementing a more distributed management system, relying more on the leadership teams of each unit. I will also hire a director of operations who will help maintain consistency across the gyms. More murmurs. Some people seemed relieved. There wouldn't be layoffs. Others looked confused by the very direct personal revelation. I know this is unexpected, Michael continued. Believe me, it was for me too. But I want to be transparent with you. This company was built on trust and integrity, and I uphold that by being honest about my situation. Questions? Several hands went up. Michael answered patiently. No, he was not selling. The company. Yes, he would remain involved in important decisions. No, there would not be cuts or radical restructuring. But Sarah barely paid attention to the words. She was watching the man in front of the room, exposing his vulnerability to 40 employees, choosing honesty over maintaining the facade of corporate perfection. After the meeting, as people dispersed into small groups discussing the news, Sarah felt her phone vibrate. I need your help. Today, if you can. Please. She looked around, but Michael had already left the auditorium. She typed back, What happened? Chloe arrived early. She's at the hotel. With Matthew. She wants me to meet him tonight. I don't feel ready. Can you go with me? Sarah bit her lower lip. It was too much. It was too fast. But when she read, I don't feel ready, she couldn't say no. What time? 7? I can pick you up. Search? Sarah thought quickly. She would have to ask Mrs. Thompson to keep Emma beyond the usual hours. It would cost extra, money that wasn't exactly abundant in the budget, but... All right, pick me up from work. But Michael, are you sure you want me there? This is the first time you will see your son. Exactly for that reason, I need someone who knows what they're doing. Please, Sarah. Okay, at 7. The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze. Sarah handled tasks on autopilot, her mind already at the evening meeting. What do you wear to meet your secret son's... What, boss? Friend? Something more? At 6:30, she locked herself in the women's restroom and tried to freshen up a bit. She undid her bun, brushed her hair, applied a bit more lipstick. Looking in the mirror, she saw a 34-year-old woman with dark circles from not sleeping enough and worrying too much. She wasn't particularly beautiful, not in the conventional sense, but she had kind eyes, her grandfather always said. She had a smile that put people at ease. That would have to be enough. Michael was waiting for her in the parking lot, leaning against a shiny black SUV. When he saw her, he opened the passenger door, a chivalrous gesture that Sarah didn't expect. Thank you for coming, he said as soon as she got in the car. He smelled of his usual woodsy cologne, but there was also a hint of nervousness. He was sweating slightly. It's okay, Sarah said, fastening her seatbelt. You're going to be fine. I don't know about that. He started the car, but didn't pull out of the spot immediately. Sarah, what if he looks at me and feels nothing? What if I look at him and don't feel that instant connection that parents are supposed to feel? Then you pretend until you feel it, Sarah said with brutal honesty, because kids can tell when adults are being fake. But they also sense genuine effort. You don't need to be perfect, Michael. You just need to be present and try. He nodded, swallowing hard, and finally pulled out of the parking lot. The hotel was a Holiday Inn in the Fifth Avenue area, clean but without unnecessary luxuries. Chloe had sent the room number, 812. They rode the elevator in silence. Sarah could feel the tension radiating from Michael in almost palpable waves. Breathe, she whispered when they reached the 8th floor. He obeyed, inhaling deeply before knocking on the door of room 812. The woman who opened it was discreetly beautiful. Short brown hair, green eyes, practical clothes of someone who travels a lot. She looked to be in her late 30s or early 40s. Her face lit up when she saw Michael, but there was tension there too. Michael, thank you for coming so quickly. She spoke French with a slight accent. Then her eyes landed on Sarah. "I didn't know you would bring someone. Chloe, this is Sarah. She is a friend, someone who understands children and is helping me with this transition." Chloe studied Sarah for a moment, clearly assessing before nodding. "Okay. Please come in." The room was standard, 2 twin beds, a small table, TV on the wall. Sitting on one of the beds, surrounded by toy cars and a tablet, was a small boy. Matthew. He had the same dark brown eyes as Michael, the same face shape, but his hair was lighter, leaning towards reddish-brown. He wore a Spider-Man t-shirt and sweatpants. When he looked up and saw Michael, his expression was pure curiosity. "Matthew, mon chéri. This is Michael," Chloe said gently in French, then repeated in English. "It's the dad that Mommy told you about." The boy looked at Michael, then at his mother, then back at Michael. "Hi," he said in English, his voice small but clear. Michael froze. For a moment, Sarah could see him struggling with emotions. Surprise, fear, something that felt dangerously close to panic. She stepped forward, breaking the moment of tension. "Hi, Matthew. My name is Sarah. What cool cars do you have here? Can I see?" The boy nodded, clearly more comfortable with Sarah than with the strange man who was supposedly his father. Sarah sat on the bed next to him, picking up one of the cars, a yellow Camaro. "This is my favorite," Matthew said, getting excited. "It's Bumblebee. Do you know Transformers?" "I do. My daughter Emma likes them too, but she prefers the Autobots." "Me too. The Decepticons are bad." Michael finally found movement in his legs. He approached slowly, as if getting close to a wild animal that might get scared. He knelt beside the bed, getting to Matthew's level. "I used to like cars when I was your age," he said, his voice coming out rougher than usual. "My favorite was a red Beetle." Matthew looked at him with renewed interest. "Beetle? Like in the movie?" "Exactly like in the movie. Herbie." "Cool." Matthew picked up another car and handed it to Michael. "You can be this one. We can have a race." Sarah watched the scene with her heart tight. Michael held the car in his large hands, clearly unsure of what to do with it, but trying. Matthew was already setting up an imaginary track on the bedspread, using pillows as obstacles. "You have to make the engine noise," Matthew instructed seriously. "Otherwise it's not real." Michael looked at Sarah, an almost comical expression of panic on his face. She smiled encouragingly and made the sound of an engine with her mouth. Matthew laughed, delighted. "Like this, oh," the boy demonstrated, making an exaggerated vroom vroom as he moved his Bumblebee along the improvised track. Michael tried to imitate, the sound coming out awkward and low, but Matthew nodded approvingly. "Good! Now race!" For the next 15 minutes, Sarah and Chloe watched as father and son played. It was awkward, full of strange pauses, but there was something genuine there. Michael was trying, and Matthew, with that natural acceptance of children were leaving. Chloe gestured for Sarah, and they moved to the other side of the room, giving space for the moment. "Thank you for coming," Chloe said softly, her green eyes studying Sarah. He seemed terrified. "On the phone. You are... "We are friends," Sarah replied quickly. "I have a daughter the same age as Matthew. Michael asked me for help because he's learning to be a father." Chloe didn't seem entirely convinced, but she didn't press. "Is he a good man? I need to know. I'm going to leave my son with him." The question was fair. Sarah thought carefully before responding. "He is good. He is honest, hard-working, and genuinely committed to making this work. He's terrified, but I think every first-time dad is. He will make mistakes, but he will be present. That counts for a lot." Chloe nodded slowly. "I never wanted to do this. Take Matthew away from me. Leave him with someone he barely knows. But this opportunity in London, it's the chance of my career. And I can't drag a 6-year-old to the Middle East where we have no family, where he would have to completely change his life. You're doing the best you can with an impossible situation, Sarah said gently. No one can judge you for that. People are going to judge anyway. There was bitterness in Chloe's voice. The mother who abandoned her. Child, even if I come to visit him during the holidays, even if we do video calls every day. Sarah had no answer to that, because it was true. The world was cruel to mothers who made tough choices. She knew that herself. How many times had she been judged for not having a husband, for raising Emma alone, for working so much? A shout of joy came from the bed. Matthew had apparently won the race and was celebrating with his arms up. Michael was laughing, a genuine laugh, not forced, and that sound made something inside Sarah's chest warm. He will be fine, Sarah told Chloe. They both will. They stayed at the hotel for another hour. Chloe ordered room service, sandwiches and fries for Matthew, coffee for the adults. They talked logistics. Matthew was already enrolled in an international school near Michael's house and would start the following week. Chloe had organized all the legal paperwork with lawyers. She would stay in New York for another 2 weeks, making a gradual transition before heading to London. I thought we could do it this way, Chloe explained. The first few days, you spend a few hours with him here at the hotel. Then he sleeps at your house, Michael, but I'll stay close in case he needs me. Gradually, we increase the time until he's comfortable. That makes sense, Michael agreed, but Sarah could see the tension in his shoulders. Everything was happening so fast. When they finally left the hotel, it was already past 10 at night. Sarah had called Mrs. Thompson 3 times, assuring her that everything was fine with Emma, promising to pay extra for the extended hours. In the car, Michael drove in silence for several minutes before speaking. I didn't expect to feel this. Feel what? Fear, but also something else. When he laughed, when he showed me the toy cars, there was something in my chest that I can't explain, like a recognition. This is my son. Sarah smiled in the dark of the car. It's the beginning. It won't always be easy, but these moments will accumulate. One day you'll wake up and won't be able to imagine life without him. How did you know you wanted to have Emma? You said you were in grad school, had plans. How did you decide? It wasn't a rational decision, Sarah admitted. It was visceral. When I took the pregnancy test and saw the positive, I had about 5 minutes of pure panic, and then I felt protection, as if my body had already decided even though my mind was still processing. When her father said he didn't want to stay, that I should handle the situation, I knew I couldn't. She was mine. Period. You're much braver than I am. I'm not. I just had fewer choices. You would have done the same if you had known about Matthew from the start. I would have, he said with certainty. Definitely would have. Michael stopped in front of Sarah's building in Brooklyn. The neighborhood was quiet, only a few bars still open with their regular customers. She started to open the door, but his voice stopped her. Sarah? She turned. In the dark of the car, illuminated only by the streetlights, his eyes seemed even darker. I wouldn't have made it today without you. Seriously, thank you. You're welcome. That's what friends are for. Is that all we are? Friends? The question hung in the air between them. Sarah knew she should say yes, keep the lines clear, protect herself. But when she looked at him, at the man who had opened up to her, who trusted her with his vulnerabilities, who made her heart race just by being near, she couldn't lie. I don't know, she said honestly. I don't know what we are, but I know I like being near you, that I think about you more than I should, that I wake up checking if you texted. That's something. It's much more than something, Michael said, his voice husky. At least for me. He leaned in, a slow enough movement for Sarah to pull back if she wanted. but she didn't pull back. When his lips touched hers, it was soft, almost hesitant. A kiss that asked a question instead of making a statement. Sarah responded, her hands finding his face, feeling the rough stubble under her fingers. The kiss deepened, and for a moment everything else disappeared. The complications, the fears, the work hierarchies. There was only that. Two lonely adults finding comfort in each other. When they broke apart, both were breathless. "This changes everything," Sarah whispered. "I know." Michael rested his forehead against hers. "Is it worth it? The risk?" Sarah thought. In all the reasons to say no, she thought about how it could go wrong, how she was risking her job, her stability, Emma's well-being. But then she thought about how she felt when she was with him, seen, valued, not alone. "Vale," she said. "But we need to be careful, very careful." "I agree. At work we keep everything professional, nothing that gives room for gossip. And with the kids, they can't know yet, not until we're sure about this." "How long until we're sure?" Sarah laughed softly. "I have no idea. We figure it out, along the way." "Seems to be our theme," he said, stealing another quick kiss. Sarah finally got out of the car, her legs shaky, her heart racing. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken again, entered the apartment where Mrs. Thompson was watching a soap opera with the volume low. "Sorry for the delay, Mrs. Thompson." "No problem, dear. Emma fell asleep early today. She had a busy day at school." Sarah paid the agreed amount plus an extra, thanked her profusely, and finally found herself alone. She went to Emma's room, watching her daughter sleep, hair spread out on the pillow, one arm thrown over her worn teddy bear. She had kissed Michael. She had admitted she felt something. She had opened the door to something that could change everything, for better or for worse. Sarah lightly touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss there, scary and exciting in equal measures. The next day, life returned to its normal surface routine. Sarah arrived at work, greeted colleagues, solved problems. Michael passed by her area once, waved formally, and kept walking. To any outside observer, nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The messages continued, now with a different tone. They still exchanged advice about kids. Michael was having his second visit with Matthew after work, but there was also another type of conversation intertwined. "I can't stop thinking about last night." "Me too. It was unexpected. Good unexpected. Very good. When can I see you again? Outside of work?" Sarah bit her lip, looking at her phone screen. It was risky. Each meeting increased the chances of someone finding out, of gossip starting, but she wanted to see him. She wanted it badly. "Saturday? Emma is going to my mum's for the day." "Perfect. Dinner?" "Nothing too public. We can't risk being seen together." "My place, then?" "I promise to behave." "Sort of." Sarah laughed to herself at her desk, earning a curious look from Jessica. "Okay, but you cook." "Deal." The days leading up to Saturday dragged on with torturous slowness. Sarah tried to focus on work, but her mind kept wandering to the planned dinner. She oscillated between excitement and panic. What was she doing? She was about to go to her boss's house, alone, for dinner after they had kissed. On Thursday, the situation at work became more tense for a completely different reason. Vanessa Williams, the administrative manager of Fit Nation, entered the coordination room with an expression Sarah had learned to recognize as problematic. Vanessa was 45, had been with the company since the beginning, even before the chain expanded, and clearly considered herself indispensable. She was efficient, Sarah had to admit, but she was also territorial and possessive, regarding Michael in a way that always seemed peculiar. "Sarah, I need to talk to you," Vanessa said, her tone too sharp to be casual. "In my office." Now. Jessica and Michelle exchanged meaningful glances. No one liked being called to Vanessa's office. Sarah followed the woman down the hallway to the administrative office. Vanessa was tall, slender, always impeccably dressed in designer clothes. She wore her platinum blonde hair pulled back in a bun so tight it looked painful. Her blue eyes were cold, calculating. "Sit down," Vanessa ordered, more than invited. Sarah sat in the chair facing the desk, her hands crossed in her lap. "I'll be direct," Vanessa began, her fingers drumming on the glass table. "I've noticed you've been close to Dr. Michael lately. Private conversations. Him passing through your area with unusual frequency. I want to know what's going on." Sarah's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. "I don't understand the question. Dr. Michael passes through various areas frequently. It's part of his job to supervise. Don't treat me like an idiot." Vanessa's voice was sharp as glass. "I've worked with him for 15 years. I know his patterns, his routines, and lately those patterns have changed. He's been different, more distracted, and every time I look, you're around." "With all due respect, Vanessa, that sounds paranoid." Vanessa's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Let me tell you something, Sarah. This company is my life. I was here when it was just a small gym in Chelsea. I helped build all of this. I saw Michael get married. I saw him lose Rebecca. I saw him survive the worst moment of his life. And I won't stand by while an opportunist tries to take advantage of his vulnerability." Sarah felt anger boiling inside her. "Opportunist? I've worked here for 4 years, Vanessa. I've built my reputation with hard work. I don't need to take advantage of anyone." "So you deny it, deny that there's something going on between you two?" Sarah knew she needed to be careful. One wrong word, and Vanessa would have exactly what she wanted. Confirmation of her suspicions. "There's nothing inappropriate happening. Dr. Michael has been kind to me, as he is with all employees. If you're interpreting basic kindness as something more, the problem lies in your interpretation, not in reality." "I have eyes, Sarah, and I'm not the only one who noticed. Other employees are commenting." "Commenting on what, exactly? That my boss greets me when he passes by, that we have professional conversations. That's harassment, Vanessa. You're creating a hostile environment based on what? Jealousy." The word hung in the air like a grenade. Vanessa turned pale. "How dare you?" "I'm just pointing out the obvious," Sarah interrupted, finding her courage, "that I didn't know I had. You clearly have unrequited feelings for Dr. Michael. That's no secret to anyone in the company. And now you're channeling that frustration onto me because... Why? Because he was nice to me." "Get out of my office," Vanessa said, her voice icy. "Now!" "Gladly." Sarah stood up, her legs trembling but her back straight. "But let me tell you something. Vanessa, if this harassment continues, I will take it to HR. I have the right to a safe work environment, just like any other employee." Sarah left the office before Vanessa could respond, but she could feel the woman's eyes boring into her back like daggers. Back at her desk, Sarah tried to calm her racing heart. Her hands trembled so much that she had to hide them under the desk. Jessica approached with concern etched on her face. "Are you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine. Just Vanessa being Vanessa." But she wasn't fine, because Vanessa had noticed, and if she had noticed, others might have as well. Sarah and Michael needed to be even more careful. She sent a quick message. "We need to talk. It's urgent." The reply came 10 minutes later. "My office. It's free now." Sarah walked down the hallway with a knot in her stomach. When she entered Michael's office and closed the door, he was already standing, concern evident on his face. What happened? Sarah told him everything. The conversation with Vanessa, the accusations, the veiled threats. Michael listened with his jaw increasingly tense. "She has no right to question you like that," he said when Sarah finished. "I'll talk to her immediately." "No." Sarah held his arm. "That will only make things worse. It will look like you're defending me specifically, confirming her suspicions." "So what do you suggest? That I let her harass you?" "I suggest we be even more careful. No private conversations at work. No you passing through my area. We keep everything strictly professional while we're here." Michael ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I hate this. I hate that you have to deal with this because of me. It's not because of you. It's because Vanessa has her own unresolved issues. But Michael, she's not entirely wrong. People are noticing. We need to be more careful, or this will blow up in our faces." He nodded reluctantly. "Are you still coming on Saturday?" Sarah hesitated. It would be wiser to cancel, to create distance. But when she looked at him, the genuine concern in his eyes, the way he seemed personally offended that someone had treated her poorly, she couldn't. "I will. But this has to be the exception, not the rule. We can't risk more frequent meetings until things cool down." "I understand." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "Sarah, I don't want you to feel pressured into anything. If this is causing you problems, we can stop. We can go back to being just co-workers." The offer was genuine, Sarah knew. He would let her go if she asked, but the truth was she didn't want to stop. Despite the risks, despite the complications, she wanted to see where this could lead. "I don't want to stop," she said softly. "I just want to be smart about how we continue." The smile he gave her was small but warm. "Smart. We can do that." On Saturday, Sarah left Emma with her mother in the northern area, a bus ride of an hour and a half that she made monthly. Her mother, Mrs. Johnson, was a strong and opinionated 60-year-old woman who had raised 3 children alone after her husband left her for a younger woman. "You look too pretty for a regular Saturday afternoon," Mrs. Johnson observed, her sharp eyes studying the navy blue dress Sarah wore, not too formal, not too casual. "Is there someone?" "Mom, don't start." "I'm just asking. It's been a while since I've seen you like this, with a sparkle in your eyes." Sarah kissed her mother's cheek. "I'm just going out with a friend. I'll be back to pick up Emma tomorrow after lunch." "Sure thing. We're going to make brownies, right, Emma?" Emma squealed with joy, and Sarah took advantage of the distraction to escape before more awkward questions. Michael had sent the address, West Side, as she already knew. The Uber took 25 minutes, moving from the outskirts of Brooklyn to the wealthy neighborhoods of the South. The houses grew larger, the cars more expensive, the streets more tree-lined. His house was a modern townhouse with a glass and exposed concrete facade, a black automatic gate. Sarah took a deep breath before ringing the bell. Michael opened the door personally, wearing jeans and a grey button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He was barefoot, his hair slightly tousled, and Sarah realized she had never seen him so relaxed. "Hi," he said, a genuine smile on his face. "Come in." The interior was exactly as Sarah had imagined, modern minimalist decor, lots of open space, neutral colors, but there was also an empty quality, as if it were a magazine house rather than a home. No personal photos, no objects that indicated personality. "It's beautiful," Sarah said, looking around. "It's empty," Michael corrected. "Rebecca chose almost everything. After she passed away, I didn't have the courage to change anything, but I also can't add anything of my own. It's frozen in time." Sarah understood. It was a museum house, just as she had said before. Michael guided her to the kitchen, a spacious area with white marble countertops, gleaming stainless steel appliances, and a central island where ingredients were spread out in an organized manner. Sarah recognized tomatoes, fresh basil, buffalo mozzarella, fresh pasta. "Are you going to make pizza?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "Well, Trying to make it, Michael replied with a shy smile that completely transformed his usual serious face. I saw a video on YouTube. It looked simple, but now I'm starting to question my skills. Sarah laughed, feeling part of the tension she carried on her shoulders dissolve. Need help? Desperately. They worked side by side, Sarah guiding while Dr. Michael followed instructions. He was overly careful, measuring each ingredient with almost scientific precision, while Sarah was used to doing everything by eye, adapting as necessary. You don't need to be so exact, she said when she saw him measuring basil with a kitchen scale. Cooking isn't chemistry. For some people it is chemistry, he replied, but lowered the scale anyway. For me, having burned water a few times, I need structure. You burned water? I left it boiling and forgot. When I came back, it had evaporated completely and the pot was warped. Sarah laughed so hard she had to lean against the counter. Okay, that's impressive on a completely wrong level. The pizza turned out surprisingly good. Not perfect. The crust was thicker on one side, but tasty. They ate outside, on a balcony overlooking a small but well-kept garden. The September sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink. This is nice, Dr. Michael said, vaguely gesturing with a piece of pizza. Being here with you, simple, no complications. But there are complications, Sarah gently reminded him. Many of them. I know. Vanessa, work, the kids, the whole situation with Matthew, he sighed. Sometimes I wonder if I'm crazy for adding one more complicated variable to the equation. If you're crazy, then so are we both. Doctor, Michael reached across the table, his fingers finding hers. The touch was simple but loaded with meaning. How did your mom handle it when your dad left? She survived, worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, cried when she thought we weren't watching, but she always made sure we had what we needed. Sarah traced small circles on the back of his hand with her thumb. She taught me that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. You choose to show up, choose to do the hard work, choose to stay even when everything tells you to run. Is that why you stayed with Emma when her dad left? I chose her, and I keep choosing her every day. Sarah paused. And you? Are you choosing Matthew, even with all the fear? I am, Dr. Michael said without hesitation. It's terrifying, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but yes, I'm choosing him. Then it will work out. It may not be perfect, but it will work out. They stayed there as the sky darkened, talking about everything and nothing. Dr. Michael shared about growing up in an Italian family where displays of affection were seen as weakness, about how his father expected him to pursue medicine but he chose engineering, about meeting Rebecca at a conference and somehow knowing she was special. I loved her, he said, his voice heavy with memory. But it was different from what I feel now. We were young, idealistic. We thought love conquered all. And then she died, and I discovered that love conquers nothing, especially not runaway trucks on the highway. Do you feel guilty for being here with me? Dr. Michael thought about the question. I did. At first, every time I caught myself smiling or feeling happy, that voice in my head would say I didn't have the right, that it was betrayal. He squeezed her hand. But a therapist I saw for a few months after the accident told me something that stuck with me. She said, "The dead don't need your loyalty. They're gone. Who needs your loyalty is you, your ability to keep living." Your therapist was wise. She was. I stopped going because I thought I was better. Now I realize I was just numb. He looked at Sarah, something vulnerable and true in his eyes. You made me feel again. That scares and comforts me at the same time. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I understand. After Emma's dad left, I built walls so high that no one could get through. I told myself it was to protect Emma, but really it was to protect myself. It was easier to be alone than to risk being abandoned again. And now? Now I'm scared, but also hopeful. I don't know. It's confusing. Dr. Michael stood up and walked around the table, pulling Sarah to her feet as well. He hugged her, and she allowed herself to melt against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, feeling his warmth through his shirt. "We can be confused together," he murmured against her hair. "You don't have to have all the answers." They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other until the night air began to cool and they needed to go inside. Inside the house, Dr. Michael put on music, something soft, old bossa nova. Sarah recognized Frank Sinatra. "Do you want to dance?" he asked, and there was something shy in the question that made Sarah smile. "Can you dance?" "Terribly, but if you don't mind having your feet stepped on." Sarah stepped into his arms, and they swayed gently to the sound of Aguas de Marzo. Dr. Michael wasn't lying. He really didn't know how to dance, tripping over his own feet twice, but there was something charming about the awkward attempt. "When was the last time you danced?" Sarah asked, her head resting against his shoulder. "At my wedding, almost 10 years ago." "That's too long." "I agree." The music shifted to something more melancholic. Sarah felt Dr. Michael's arms tighten slightly around her, and when she looked up, she found him gazing at her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, always asking, always respecting. "Please." The kiss was different from the first. Where that one had been hesitant and exploratory, this was certainty. It was promise. It was choice. Sarah surrendered completely, her fingers weaving into his hair, her body pressing against his, all fears and complications temporarily silenced by the intensity of the moment. When they pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Dr. Michael rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said. "It doesn't have to be anything more than this. Just stay a little longer." Sarah knew she should go. She knew that every additional minute made everything more complicated. It was complicated, more real, more risky. But when she looked at that man, the man who was desperately trying to learn how to be a father, who treated her as if she were precious, who made her feel seen for the first time in years, she couldn't say no. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm staying." They settled into the huge sofa in the living room. Sarah nestled against Michael, a light blanket over them. They talked more, about plans for Matthew, about Sarah's fears regarding Emma growing up, about the city changing around them. At some point, Sarah fell asleep, lulled by his warmth and the sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. When she woke up, it was Sunday morning. Soft light filtered through the partially open curtains. Sarah took a moment to orient herself. She wasn't at home. She was at Michael's house, still curled up against him on the sofa. He was awake too, watching her with a small smile. "Good morning." "Good morning. What time is it?" "A little after 8. "You slept." "Well, I did." And she had. For the first time in weeks, without waking up every hour, without nightmares about bills she couldn't pay or crises she couldn't resolve. "I need to go. I have to pick up Emma." "I know." But neither of them moved immediately. Eventually, Sarah forced herself to get up. Michael made coffee while she tried to fix her hair in the bathroom, looking at herself in the mirror and seeing a woman with bright eyes and flushed cheeks. A woman who seemed lighter somehow. On the way to drop her off at her mother's house, Michael insisted on taking her. They enjoyed a comfortable silence. Before she got out of the car, he held her hand once more. "Thank you. For yesterday. For everything." "Thank you," Sarah replied. "For letting me in." "Sarah, we're going to figure out how to make this work. I want you to know that I'm committed to this. To you. I am too." And she was. Despite all the obstacles, despite all the sensible reasons not to be. The following days brought new challenges. On Monday, Matthew spent his first night at Michael's house. Chloe called 3 times between dinner and bedtime, clearly nervous about leaving her son. Michael sent panicked messages to Sarah. Matthew didn't want to eat, then didn't want to take a bath, then had a nightmare at 3 in the morning. Sarah patiently replied to each message, offering suggestions and encouragement. It's normal. All of this is normal. Breathe. You're doing well. On Tuesday, Vanessa Williams began her silent campaign. Nothing openly hostile. She was too smart for that. But Sarah suddenly found herself overwhelmed with tasks, reports that needed to be submitted under impossible deadlines, inventories to do alone after hours, work schedules at the most complicated times when she would normally be picking up Emma from school. Sarah endured it all in silence, refusing to give Vanessa the satisfaction of seeing her complain. But the nights grew longer. 4 hours of sleep turned into 3. She took work home after putting Emma to bed, typing reports at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning, waking up at 5:30 to start it all over again. "You're exhausted," Jessica commented on a Thursday, observing the deep circles under Sarah's eyes. "Vanessa is really piling it on you, isn't she? Everyone has noticed." "I'm managing," Sarah replied, taking her 4th coffee of the day. "But I shouldn't have to manage alone. This is abuse." Sarah knew Jessica was right, but what could she do? Complaining to Michael would be exactly what Vanessa wanted, proof of favoritism that Sarah was using her personal connection with the boss to avoid hard work. So she kept going, proving through sheer hard work that she deserved her position regardless of anything. On that Friday, Michael asked to see her in his office. Sarah climbed the stairs with a knot in her stomach, unsure if it would be about work or about them. It was about both. "Sit down," he said, but his voice was tense. There were papers scattered across his desk. "Sarah, I received a report from HR, a formal complaint, anonymous, but specific enough." Sarah's heart sank. "About what?" "About inappropriate relationships between a superior and a subordinate. Favoritism. The complaint mentions private conversations outside of work hours, unsolicited gifts, preferential treatment." He pushed the papers toward her. "There's no concrete evidence, but there are enough details that HR needs to investigate." Sarah read the report, feeling nausea rise. Someone, and they both knew who, had documented every little interaction, the coffee he had brought her, the times he had passed by her area. It even mentioned the day he picked her up from work, although they didn't know the real reason. "What does this mean?" Sarah asked, her voice coming out weaker than she intended. "It means there is a formal investigation. You will be interviewed by HR. I will be interviewed. They will question other employees." Michael ran a hand over his face, looking as if he had aged 10 years. "Sarah, if we're involved in any way, you need to tell me now, because if we lie and they find out, the consequences will be much worse." Sarah looked at that man who in just a few weeks had become so important in her life. She thought of all the conversations, the kisses, the night on his sofa. She thought about how she felt when she was with him. Whole, seen, not alone. "We're friends," she finally said, choosing her words carefully. "You asked me for advice about Matthew because I'm a mother and I understand these things. We talked outside of work about parenting, that's all there is." It wasn't exactly a lie. It was just an omission of the parts that mattered. Michael studied her for a long moment. "Is that what you want to tell HR?" "It's the truth, isn't it? Nothing inappropriate happened in the workplace. You never gave me favoritism. Every promotion I've received, I earned. Every task I was given, I completed with excellence." Her voice gained strength. If someone is suggesting that I'm only in this position for reasons other than competence, let them prove it. Vanessa will make this difficult for you. Vanessa is already making it difficult. But I won't give up, Michael. I won't let them force me out of a job I've worked so hard to build. The HR interview took place the following Monday. James, the HR manager, was a 50-year-old man, balding, with a permanently tired expression. He asked expected questions about her relationship with Michael, about any gifts or favors received, about whether she felt there was differential treatment. Sarah answered everything honestly within the limits of what was safe to reveal. Yes, they occasionally talked outside of work. No, never about inappropriate subjects, just parenting. Advice? Yes, he had brought coffee once, but as a friendly gesture, not a romantic one. No, she had never received favoritism. And what about your recent workload? James asked, consulting his notes. Other employees mentioned that you've been receiving a disproportionate volume of tasks. That's true, Sarah admitted, but I assume it's part of proving my worth. I have no problem working hard. Even when that work is distributed in a punitive manner? Sarah hesitated. It was an opening, a chance to officially raise the issue of Vanessa. But if she did that, it would seem like retaliation for the investigation. I can handle it, she said simply. James sighed. Sarah, I'll be frank. We found no evidence of misconduct, but we also found no evidence that nothing is happening. The situation is ambiguous. My recommendation would be to transfer you to another unit, removing any appearance of conflict of interest. No. The word came out louder than Sarah intended. I'm sorry, but no. I've worked in the Chelsea unit for 4 years. I've built relationships with clients. I know every system, every process. A transfer feels like punishment for something I didn't do. I understand your position, but you need to understand mine. I need to protect the company, and at this moment the appearance of conflict is enough to create problems. Give me a month, Sarah requested, an idea forming in her mind. 1 month to prove that my performance has nothing to do with any personal relationship. If at the end of that month you still feel a transfer is necessary, I will accept it without question. James considered. Okay, 1 month. But, Sarah, be careful. Very careful. The following weeks were the hardest Sarah had faced since Emma was born. She and Michael maintained absolute distance at work. No private conversations, no messages during business hours, not even prolonged eye contact. At night, after Emma fell asleep, they exchanged quick messages, keeping each other updated about Matthew and Emma, sharing little snippets of the day. But they didn't see each other, they couldn't risk it. Sarah felt his absence like a physical pain. She missed the conversations, his laughter, the way he made her feel less alone. But she buried those feelings deep and focused on what she could control, her work. She arrived earlier, left later, produced impeccable reports, solved every problem with maximum efficiency. When Vanessa assigned her impossible tasks, Sarah completed them. When inventories needed to be done alone on weekends, Sarah did them. When schedules conflicted with picking up Emma, Sarah adjusted, paid extra to Mrs. Thompson, found solutions. You're going to kill yourself like this, her mother said during one of the rare times she managed to visit. It's not worth it, Sarah. No job is worth your health. It is, Sarah replied, so exhausted she could barely keep her eyes open. Because it's not just about the job, Mom. It's about proving that I can do this, that I'm good enough regardless of anything else. Her mother sighed but didn't argue. In the 3rd week of September, something changed. Sarah arrived one morning to find that Vanessa was not there. No one knew where she was. She simply hadn't shown up, which was completely unusual. By noon, rumors began to circulate. Vanessa had been called by the finance department. There were discrepancies in the accounts, small amounts spread over months, but consistent. By the end of the day, the truth came to light. Vanessa had been embezzling money for almost a year. They weren't large, amounts $50, $100 here and there, but it added up. She manipulated expense reports, created fake vendors, made small adjustments that individually seemed like normal accounting errors. The investigation revealed more. Several false complaints over the years against competent employees she saw as threats. Manipulation of schedules, systematic bullying. "How did no one notice before?" Michelle asked, shocked, as the news spread. "Because she was smart," James replied, "and because she had been here so long that no one questioned her." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions: relief that the pressure would finally cease, anger at all the unnecessary suffering, and strangely, pity. Vanessa clearly had her own demons, her own unresolved pain that led her to destroy not only her career, but also to harm others. Vanessa resigned before she could be fired. There were discussions about legal proceedings, but she paid back everything she had embezzled, and Michael, tired of more drama, chose to let it go. With Vanessa gone, the atmosphere at the gym changed. It was as if a heavy cloud had dissipated. Sarah suddenly had reasonable hours, appropriate tasks, and could breathe again. The HR investigation was officially closed. James called Sarah to his office to deliver the news personally. No evidence of misconduct. The original complaint seems to have been part of a larger pattern of problematic behavior from Vanessa. He handed her an envelope. "This is a formal apology from the company for the unnecessary stress, and there's also a small bonus for your exceptional performance during a particularly challenging period." Sarah opened the envelope with trembling hands. The bonus was significant, equivalent to 3 months' rent. Tears pricked her eyes. "Thank you," she managed to say. "You deserve it, Sarah. You proved your worth 10 times over during those weeks." That night, Michael texted. "Can we talk now?" Sarah called immediately, hearing his voice. After weeks of only texting, something inside her broke and mended at the same time. "Hey," he said, and there was so much loaded in that simple word. "Hey," she replied, feeling tears streaming down uncontrollably. "Hey, it's all good now. It's over. Vanessa is gone. The investigation is over. We can try again, if you still want to." "I do. So much." "Then let's do it right this time. Slowly, transparently, no secrets that could blow up in our faces." "How?" "Starting by introducing our lives to each other. For real, you, me, Emma, Matthew, like family." The word family echoed in Sarah. "Are you sure? It's a lot, Michael. 2 kids, 2 already damaged people trying to build something new." "That's exactly why it can work," he gently interrupted. "Because we know how hard it is. Because we have no romantic illusions about it being easy. But we also know it's worth trying." Sarah wiped her tears, a smile beginning to form. "Okay, then let's try. How about a date? A real one. Tomorrow. Central Park. You bring Emma, I'll bring Matthew. We'll let the kids get to know each other. No pressure, just let's see what happens." Sounds perfect. And it was perfect, in an imperfect and real way. Emma and Matthew were shy at first, but they discovered a shared love for superheroes, and within 15 minutes were inventing elaborate games involving saving the world. Michael and Sarah walked behind, keeping a respectful distance, but looking at each other with smiles that said everything words couldn't. In the following months, dates became routine. Weekends in the park, pizzas at Michael's place, cartoons in Sarah's small apartment. The kids adapted better than any adult expected, creating their own friendship, independent of their parents. Michael learned to do messy braids in Emma's hair. Sarah taught Matthew to make brownies. They built new traditions. Sundays were pancake days. Fridays were movie nights. Wednesdays, Michael picked up both kids from school and took them for ice cream. It wasn't always easy. There were discussions about boundaries and discipline. There were nights when Sarah woke up in a panic, certain she was making a terrible mistake by letting someone in again. There were moments when Michael felt overwhelmed, when learning to be a father of two instead of one seemed impossible. But they talked about everything, about fears and hopes and the little frustrations of everyday life. And always they returned to that choice, choosing to show up, choosing to do the work, choosing to stay. 6 months after that wrong message, Michael asked a question. It wasn't a marriage proposal. They both agreed it was too soon for that, but it was something equally significant. "I found a house," he said one Sunday morning, as they made coffee together in his kitchen, the kids still sleeping. 3 bedrooms, one for you and me, one for Emma, one for Matthew. In Brooklyn, near an excellent public school, small but decent yard, close enough to the gym that you can keep your job and your independence. Sarah stopped stirring the sugar in her coffee. "Are you asking me to move in together? I'm asking us to build something together, not a fairy tale where I rescue you or you rescue me, but a real partnership. 2 wounded people finding a way to create something new and strong, based on mutual respect and true companionship." He held her hands. "It's not perfect. It will be hard, but it will be ours." Sarah thought of all the reasons to say no. She thought about how scary it was to trust again, to risk everything again. But then she thought about the last few months, the laughter, the support, how good it felt not to be alone. "I need time," she said honestly. "I need to talk to Emma, make sure she's ready. I need to know we're doing this for the right reasons." "How much time do you need?" Sarah smiled. "Ask me again in 3 months?" "I can do that." He gently kissed her forehead. "Sarah, I'll wait, as long as it takes, because this you is worth waiting for." 3 months later, on a warm December afternoon, Sarah and Emma packed their lives into boxes. It wasn't much. Worn furniture, clothes, books, toys, but it was all they had. Michael showed up with a moving truck, Matthew hanging out the window excitedly shouting about the new room he would share with Emma. Mrs. Thompson cried and made Sarah promise she would visit. Mrs. Johnson gave her rare seal of approval. "This seems good, dear. Don't let it slip away." The new house was exactly as Michael described. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, close to everything. It wasn't a mansion in the West Side. It was humble, attainable, perfect. As they unpacked boxes, organized books on shelves and hung pictures on walls, Sarah had a moment of clarity. This wasn't the end of a fairy tale. It was the beginning of something better, something real. That night, when the kids finally fell asleep exhausted in their new rooms, Sarah and Michael sat in the small yard, sharing a bottle of cheap wine, looking at the stars. "You know that wrong message?" Sarah said, her head resting on his shoulder. "That started all of this?" "Mm-hmm. I think it wasn't a mistake. I think it was exactly what we needed. At the exact time, we needed it." Michael pulled her closer. "So you don't regret it? Everything we went through to get here?" Sarah thought about the sleepless nights, the fear, the tears, the uncertainties. She also thought about the laughter, the support, how it felt to wake up and know she wasn't alone. "Not for a second," she said. "It was worth every a moment." And there, under the starry sky of New York, 2 wounded people who found healing in each other, who chose to build something new from the broken pieces of their old lives. Sarah knew with absolute certainty one thing. Sometimes the best stories begin with the most unexpected mistakes, and the happiest endings are those you build brick by brick, choice by choice, day after day. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and that was more than enough.